Okay, I think we'll just start doing the introductions, just a few more people might join while I'm just doing introductions. Good evening, I'm David Charlesworth. I'm Communications Manager here at the Greater Cambridge Partnership. The Waterbeach to Cambridge Busway is one of the projects that I work on. I'll be chairing tonight's meeting. I'm joined by some colleagues who are going to do a presentation for you and be available to answer questions. A couple of introductions. The project manager is Paul van der Balk, and he'll be here to answer any questions you have about the project. And we're going to hear a presentation from Amy Barnett, who's a part of the technical team at Atkins, who's been leading on the design and technical work. Amy's going to run through a presentation. The presentation is going to be in two parts. The first part will look at the two preferred options that we have identified for the busway and active travel route between Waterbeach, Newtown and Cambridge, and then the second part will be talking about the three options we've identified for a new park and ride site at Waterbeach on the A10. There'll be opportunities to ask questions at the end of the presentation. Two ways to ask questions. You can put your hand up, which is the raise hand at the top, and your box will go yellow, and I'll take those in order. I'll unmute you this end and you need to be unmuted that end, and we can ask questions that way. We strongly encourage people to participate. It's much easier for us to have conversation. Or if you're feeling a bit shy or don't want to do that, we also go through the chat function. You can type your question in and we'll come to those at the end. This is being recorded and will be put on our YouTube channel. Just to remind you that sort of normal rules of behaviour in terms of meetings happen, and if everyone can, I know there are some very strongly held views on that, but if we can all keep it civil and polite, then we can all have a useful interaction. This is the second of three of these that we're doing. We're doing another one for the end of the consultation finishing, and there are a number of in-person events which we'll talk about. So if you want to come and have a look at the maps in more details or want to talk to the team in more detail, there are still three opportunities for you to do that. So I think that's all the introductions. I'm going to hand over to you, Amy, so you can run through the presentation.
Thanks, David. I will just share my screen. You let me know when that's come through.
I can see that, Amy. Thanks very much.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so as David said, I'm going to firstly run through the Waterbeach to Cambridge public transport and active travel project, and then I will run through the details on the proposals for a new park and ride site. So the project aim is to deliver a new high quality segregated public transport route between Waterbeach, Newtown and Cambridge. The route will also facilitate new infrastructure for active travel and link with routes that are already in development. Providing these better public transport and active travel connections will connect homes with places of work and study to make sustainable journeys more attractive, leading to better air quality. To develop the options for the project, we've been through a four-step process. Step one consisted of establishing the need for a new public transport scheme on the corridor. A study into the future of the A10 in 2018 found that the road suffers from significant congestion during rush hours, particularly at the Cambridge end. This congestion will only get worse once New Waterbeach Newtown is built. Key to solving this congestion would be building a new public transport scheme between Waterbeach and Cambridge, which would help instill sustainable travel habits from the start. As part of step two in 2019, we started to come up with a long list of options for a new public transport scheme. We held workshops with stakeholders and a 4-week online engagement period so that the public and stakeholders could share their views on the project in its early stages. Together with the technical work, the outcomes of the engagement fed into a long list of over 50 possible routes for the new scheme. Options were sifted and assessed, which resulted in some options being discounted. This process resulted in the creation of 4 broad corridors that the busway could use: a western corridor, a central corridor, an A10 corridor, and an eastern corridor. My slides have moved on too much. There we go. In autumn 2020, we ran a public consultation on the route for a new busway, which presented these 4 options for feedback, and these are shown on the left-hand side of the slide there. Feedback from the public during the consultation showed that just over half of respondents supported the proposal to build a new busway between the Newtown at Waterbeach and Cambridge. However, the route options that ran through the Waterbeach village were strongly opposed due to the proximity to housing and the perceived impact on the local community. In 2021, following further technical work, a short list of 2 of the 4 options was selected. They were the western option and, following feedback from the public, a revised version of the central option. And those are the 2 options shown on the right-hand side of the slide here. As part of step 4, to develop the options further, we held more stakeholder workshops on the details of the 2 options. Together with stakeholder feedback, further technical work was undertaken to identify 3 specific routes within each corridor. These 6 routes were then measured against a range of technical and environmental criteria. This exercise identified 1 route within the revised central corridor and 1 route within the western corridor. This consultation seeks views on these 2 options. The next 2 slides present the details of these options. So these maps are presented within the consultation brochure, and more detailed mapping, a snippet of which is shown on the left-hand side of this slide, is available on the GCP website if you would like to look at specific details. So starting with the revised central option and taking this option from south to north, the revised central option starts at the Cambridgeshire Guided Busway to the west of the A14 underpass. The route continues north to Milton Road. It's proposed that buses will run on road along Wilton Road and Butt Lane to serve Milton Park and Ride. Milton Road and Butt Lane between the route and Milton Park and Ride are proposed to be upgraded. This upgrade applies to both route options, and more detail on the upgrade is provided later in this presentation. From Butt Lane, the route continues north, crossing Beach Road and Waterbeach Road via signalised crossings. The route crosses Mere Way to the west of the A10. At this point, the active travel infrastructure alongside the busway route connects to Mere Way to allow users to cross the A10 via the active travel bridge being provided by Urban and Civic. The busway route continues north across the A10 via the Waterbeach Newtown Southern Access Roundabout. Within Waterbeach Newtown itself, the route is proposed to run on dedicated public transport infrastructure to connect the new Waterbeach station. Connections will also be possible through the Newtown to Cambridge Research Park and for journeys to continue north on the A10 towards Ely. The proposals within Waterbeach Newtown are consistent across both the revised central option and the western option, and the project team will continue to work with the Newtown developers to develop these designs further. So looking at the western option in more detail, the western option starts at the southern end in the same location as the revised central option, with a connection to the existing Cambridgeshire Guided Busway to the west of the A14 underpass. It crosses Milton Road via a signalised crossing further west than the central option and continues north to the west of Beach before crossing Cottenham Road and Green End via signalised crossings. To the east of Green End, the active travel infrastructure alongside the busway route connects to Mere Way to allow users to cross the A10 via the active travel bridge. The busway route continues east, across the A10 via the Waterbeach Newtown Southern Access Roundabout. Arrangements in the Newtown are the same as presented for the revised central option. So these next 2 slides provide a comparison of the 2 options. In terms of journey time, the western route option offers a quicker journey if services do not divert to Milton Park and Ride due to the directness of the route. Both routes are segregated from general traffic for the majority of their journeys, and both cross the existing road network 4 times at signalised junctions. The signals will provide priority for buses along both corridors, helping to ensure reliable journeys. The estimated costs of both options are comparable, with the western route costs estimated slightly higher than the revised central route as a result of the additional upgrade to Milton Road and Butt Lane. In terms of journeys, both options are predicted to lead to a reduction of approximately 2,200 daily person trips by car in 2041. The revised central option is predicted to generate a higher level of bus and park and ride use, as well as active travel use. This is predominantly as a result of its proximity to existing settlements along the corridor, offering greater connectivity for existing users on the corridor. This image shows a typical indicative cross-section of the busway corridor and applies to both options. The width of active travel infrastructure along the route varies depending on the proximity to other active travel routes, including Mereway. Cross-sections are referenced on the more detailed drawings on the GCP website to show where the active travel infrastructure varies along each of the route corridors. The busway will be separated from the active travel route by a verge. The extent of the slope and drainage infrastructure each side of the route will vary depending on the location within the corridor. It is assumed that the busway will be optically guided, as shown by the road markings in the middle of each lane. Therefore, the infrastructure will not be the physical guidance that is used for the existing Cambridgeshire guided busway. This screenshot from our project animation shows a typical cross-section of the proposed upgrade to Butt Lane. The animation is also available to view on the consultation website. The upgrades apply to both route options. The road will be widened to allow easier bus movements, and a widened shared use path on the southern side will provide improved journeys for active travel. A verge will also separate pedestrians and cyclists from the carriageway. So this next section provides more detail on the proposals for a new park and ride. So a new park and ride near Waterbeach would serve the new town and Waterbeach itself, as well as letting vehicles off the A10 earlier in their journeys towards Cambridge. We've gone through a three-stage option identification process, which has culminated in 3 options to be presented through this consultation for feedback. Step 1 consisted of the identification of a number of zones for a potential park and ride site. These were east of the A10, near or within Waterbeach Newtown, directly adjacent to the A10 between Cambridge Research Park and Waterbeach, and to the west of the A10, to the west of Green End and Cambridge Research Park. These 3 zones were put through a high-level assessment looking at benefits and the impacts of operating a park and ride site on the areas. The conclusion of step 1 was that the zone directly adjacent to the A10 was taken forward as the optimum zone. As part of step 2, we identified 6 specific sites, broadly the same size as Milton Park and Ride, from within the zone adjacent to the A10. And these sites formed the site long list. As part of step 3, these 6 sites were looked at in more detail, including green belt designation, flood risk, and transport access. From this, we've identified the top 3 sites, and these are the ones that we're asking for feedback on as part of this consultation. So park and ride site option A is located to the east of the A10, to the north of Waterbeach Newtown. Park and ride option B is located to the west of the A10 and Waterbeach Newtown and is accessed off Green End. And park and ride option C is located to the west of the A10, to the north of Denny End Road and the west of Waterbeach Newtown. All 3 options for park and ride could connect with busway services, and sites B and C directly with the busway itself. We will also ensure that the sites are accessible by active travel modes as well as vehicles. High-level access arrangements have been identified for each park and ride site for further consideration. So for park and ride site A, there are 2 potential access options. Buses and cars could access the site from a new roundabout off the A10, or buses access the site from within Waterbeach Newtown and cars could access the site from a new roundabout on the A10. For park and ride site B, there is 1 access option. So buses could access the site from Waterbeach Newtown, Southern Roundabout, and cars could access the site from Green End. For park and ride site C, there's also 2 access options. Buses and cars could access the site from the Waterbeach Newtown Southern Roundabout, or buses could access the site from the roundabout and cars could access the site from the A10 at Denny End Road. We are seeking feedback on these options and their accesses to feed into future technical work. As the options for the park and ride site are developed further, we'll also be considering what facilities are included. We'd like to hear feedback on these facilities and any others that you would like to see at the Park and Ride site as part of the consultation. So just to briefly run through some next steps before we take some questions. So following the consultation, we will analyse the responses and integrate them with the outcomes of ongoing technical work. We're aiming to submit the outline business case to the GCP Executive Board later in 2023, along with a recommendation for a preferred busway option. Our current programme indicates that the likely start of construction would be around late 2025, early 2026. And that's the end of the presentation. David, shall I hand back to you for questions?
Yep, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Amy, so there we go. That's the presentation that we've run through. So we are covering the two preferred routes for options for the busway and active travel, and the 3 sites for the Park and Ride at Waterbeach. So happy to, I'm sorry, there's a very noisy motorcycle going by. Happy to take any questions, so if you'd like to raise your hand or if you'd like to put something in chat, we can answer your questions. No, that's me raising my hand, so I'll do that. People, okay, Nigel, okay. Hello, if we'll unmute you this end. Nigel, if you say something, you should be able to speak now.
Yep, okay, I've got a number of questions.
Yeah, sure.
The first one is, who's paying the £90 million?
The £90 million, the GCP, the Greater Cambridge Partnership, is what's known as a City Deal, which is an agreement between central government and the 3 councils in South Cambridgeshire to devolve central government funding to local transport projects. So my understanding is that it's coming out of the 500 million that we've been allocated to spend on local transport improvements, delivering high improvements to public transport and also cycling and walking to get modal shift to help facilitate the growth in and around Cambridge, is my understanding.
So how much of the 500 million do you think you've got left?
That would be a question you'd have to ask for. That's kind of like not a project question. That's a sort of broader question. And if you want to,
well, it's about funding, isn't it? So you may or may not have £90 million, because one of the things that's in the local medias on social media and everything is that the GCP have more projects than they have money. So obviously you're paying for like the Waterbeach train station, you're paying for this and you're paying for that. And so when you ask us to give feedback, one of the things we need feedback about from the GCP is if you can actually afford all these projects, or are you going to be coming to the residents of Cambridgeshire like the mayor's just done and asked for more money for buses and things? So, you know, are we expected to pick up the tab for this project?
Paul, did you want to come in on this one?
Yeah, I'll come in. So the GCP has developed a program, a wide program with various projects, as you probably know. And as you rightly said, the program is underfunded, which is the decision that's been made. Some would say that it's kind of a good way of running a program, because you basically have slightly more projects than you have the funding for, in the anticipation that some projects might get held up or might get stuck or might run into problems and they can't be delivered. If you run it the other way around, you end up in a situation towards the end of the program where you've got a load of money left over and no projects to build. So that's some of the reasoning as to why the program has more projects than current funding. David has rightly said that the 500 million City Deal fund from government that's part of the funding. The funding is coming in 3 phases. So we've had the first 100 million and the second 200 million, and we need to go for a gateway review in 2025, where we should hopefully get the final 200 million. This funding is match funded through local developer contributions and other sources of funding that have been identified within the free councils. So it's capital funding. It's been identified, and the GCP has got a limited fund, and it's not going to come to residents asking for extra capital funding for these kind of projects.
Well, it kind of is, because it's asking for this £5 surcharge, isn't it? But that's a different subject which we won't go into. So my next question is, and I see Rebecca's on the meeting as well, is so that the central busway or the western busway, you know, I can, you know, you've got, everybody has different views on it, but why are we destroying the Mere Way as well? Because this busway is now offering a cycleway which is going to be more pleasant for cyclists, because it's going to have lighting. It'll be more sort of like friendly to groups that have concerns about dark ways. So the Mere Way runs, you know, hundreds of meters from this white elephant. So why are we destroying the Mere Way and turning that into a bikeway, and also now having a bikeway on the busway? Because I'd have been really happy to see that we part the Mere Way, we don't destroy our Roman infrastructure, and we just concentrated on the busway. So why are we destroying the Mere Way?
So this project is not destroying the Mere Way, and in fact has very limited ability to interfere with the process that has been agreed between the developer and the county council and the planning authority.
But the question is why we now got two cycleways next to each other? Is it because we're expecting buses to clear off the road and we need to have a dual cycleway? I don't think so. So I can't understand why Rebecca is funding the Mere Way when she could actually probably help fund your busway. It just doesn't make, you know, any business sense that we're wasting money on destroying the Mere Way, which is a beautiful walkway at the moment. So that's being destroyed so it could be a cycleway, and then you're going to plonk a cycleway right next to it.
So this is not part of the issue. Is that the planning authority required that an active travel route was provided before houses built at Waterbeach, or before a certain number of houses. So they placed a requirement, a Section 106, through the Section 106 mechanism, they placed a requirement on Urban and Civic to develop Mere Way and create that route, active travel route between the new town and Cambridge. Subsequently, we have kicked off this project, and the issue is, and the reason that the planning authority won't row back and won't release Urban and Civic from that requirement to build the active travel route is partly due to risk. So the project that we're talking about today is not yet approved. It has a good business case in terms of strategic business case, but that doesn't mean it will come to fruition. And as you mentioned before, there's potential funding issues that it may run into the future. So I'm not saying it won't be built, but I'm just saying it's not approved yet, and it's got a little way to go before it gets approved. If the planning authority releases Urban and Civic from the requirement to build Mere Way, and the eventuality happens that this project doesn't go forward, then we'd be in a situation where there was no active travel link between the new town and Cambridge, and therefore in planning terms the new town can't be built because that active travel route doesn't exist.
Yeah, but which is a real shame, isn't it, that, you know, South Cambridge District Council, Cambridge County Council.
Nigel, I know you've had a long time.
I've got some other questions. Somebody else could have some questions.
So that's fine. That's fine. But that's kind of the reasoning, Nigel. So yes, it is a question of timing. It's a question of risk and kind of planning requirements. So what the approach that we've taken is that There is a requirement on the busway infrastructure to have a maintenance track, as per the existing guided busway has it. So we have obviously designed that into our scheme. So our anticipation is that eventually, if given all of the stuff I've said, if our scheme comes forward in the future, we will provide that active travel infrastructure, and at that point in time, we anticipate that Mereway will kind of revert back to kind of the usage that it sees today, sort of more of a leisure route and less of a commuting route, if you see what I mean.
Apart from it being concreted over.
Nigel, do you want to move on to your next question?
Yep. Okay. So the next one is, in your presentations, you don't talk about the destruction of the green belt and what you're going to do about sort of like putting in something like an orchard or something to actually mitigate against the destruction of the green belt, which is quite prized. And the obvious real big worry is that you destroy the green belt, you cut the field in Waterbeach if you go the central way in two, one of them being quite a small parcel of land, which just means somebody's going to ask for housing development. So your plan seems to be open great for developers to go and put another 300 plus houses in Waterbeach. And finally, on the feedback on things like cycling, because I am a cyclist, one of the big issues that cyclists face is theft of a bicycle. You know, I can't cycle anywhere in Cambridge and leave my bike in a public place because I know that within 6 months it'll be stolen. So what we really need is sort of like manned cycle stations. So I'd be interesting to know, you know, are you planning to have a manned cycle station where to leave your bikes? Because otherwise they get stolen.
Okay, thanks for your questions, Nigel. Amy, did you want to pick up on the compensatory habitat issue?
Yeah, I've just jotted down those points so I can, I'll go through. So in terms of Greenbelt, first of all, so Greenbelt is one of the criteria that we've looked at right from the start of our option identification and development process, and that assessment based on Greenbelt criteria has run through that whole process. So we're aware of the constraints and the impact on the Greenbelt. And subsequently, as you have rightly said, Nigel, that links into considerations around kind of landscaping and biodiversity gain that we're considering as part of the project. So after this phase, once our preferred option has been selected, the next part of the study will include a landscape strategy and also a biodiversity strategy. And the GCP have a target for 20% net gain across all of their portfolio. So that's something that we will look to build into this project and make sure that we can provide that depending on which option is taken forward. And then on the land parcel question, so we've been having discussions with landowners along both corridors over the last few weeks, and we've been discussing the impact on specific land parcels, whether the route runs through the centre, whether the route runs along the edge, whether the route leaves parcels and there's kind of differing opinions among landowners actually as to what the preferred approach would be. So depending on which option's chosen, those discussions will be ongoing and will help us identify the exact route alignment within each corridor that best suits the landowners and their tenants on that corridor itself.
So we will get housing then?
No, that's not what we said.
Or we're very likely to get housing.
No, that's not what we said.
Okay, so are the GCP going to say there will be no housing in the diverged fields?
Nigel, I think we.
Yep, that's fine.
So it's a question. We can answer it.
Okay.
The GCP is never going to say that because, like you, the GCP isn't in control of whether housing gets built or not. So our remit is to build a transport link between the housing, the new town at Waterbeach and Cambridge. It's for the local, so it's for the local authority to determine where housing goes and where it doesn't go. And at the moment, the local planning policy is slanted towards providing housing in the Greater Cambridge area in larger developments rather than lots of small infill housing on existing villages. So that's the current policy, and whether housing is built in the future is purely down to the local planning authority. It's not down to the GCP. It's not something that obviously we're David and I are both local people. We're kind of in the same situation as you. We're delivering this project to kind of create the transport link, not in anticipation of opening up parcels of land for housing.
Okay, thanks very much, Paul. I think we've addressed all your questions we can answer.
Cycle theft.
So Amy, you can maybe answer that.
Yeah, so in terms of at the Park and Ride, we're still developing our options in terms of consideration for cycle security, and looking at a variety of cycle parking solutions, and also other facilities that are included at the Park and Ride site. So I think that's all up for debate as part of this consultation, and also as part of the consultation we're asking for feedback on the facilities. So yeah, please raise concerns around cycle security and any mitigation measures that we could consider as part of that in your feedback for the consultation.
I would say I very much agree with the comment made by you, Nigel, that obviously, yeah, I have the same issue leaving my bike around Cambridge, and I guess David has the same thoughts as well because he rides around. So we know the issue around Cambridge and in Cambridge. I don't know whether a manned solution is the way forward, or whether there are other solutions, but it's definitely something that if you've got ideas, then put them in the consultation feedback and we'll take them on board, because I think we need solutions that actually work on this, especially in a park and ride location where you may leave your bike all day long.
Absolutely. Okay, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I carry around a very, very heavy D-lock, which which I get fed up of lugging around when I'm cycling. But Nigel, thank you. Thanks for your contribution.
Nigel, you can come back at the end if we've got time. There's no limit on questions here. But
no, that's fine.
That's all my questions.
I just want to. We've got a number of people hands up here, Paul. So I'm just like. Yeah. So the next person it says Ella brackets guest. So if you unmute yourself your side, Ella, and we will be able to answer your question.
Thanks, David. Just to confirm, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Perfect. And thank you, Amy, for the presentation. I just had a couple of questions, if that's all right. And the first one was just on, you mentioned in the presentation that the public were consulted on 4 corridors in 2020. Can I just check, were Land Beach residents included in that consultation?
Yes, they were. Everybody in Land Beach got a booklet that was delivered to their property. And Paul went and did at least 2 presentations to the parish council at Land Beach, wasn't it, Paul?
Definitely once. I can't remember.
Yeah, we definitely twice.
Okay.
It was during COVID and restrictions, so we couldn't do any in-person events, but we also did a number of these online seminars, which we publicised widely through social media and the local papers and press and stuff like that. And also all the district and county councillors for Land Beach and the parish council were fully aware of the consultation and engaged in the process when we did the original consultation.
Okay, thank you.
Have I forgotten anything, Paul? I think
no, but we would have definitely talked to Land Beach in that first consultation, because the western option was around then, and it passes to the fairly closely to the west of Land Beach, so we consider that Land Beach is definitely.
Was the revised central route in that consultation?
No, because so we had Amy. Do you want to just bring up the maps?
So just to confirm, this is the first time that we're getting consulted on the revised central route.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So we had a central route option, a western, an option that went closely to the A10, and then an eastern option that kind of picked up with the railway. Amy mentioned in her presentation the reasons that we kind of modified that central option. Do you want to go over them again, Amy?
So the reasons I understood were it impacted Waterbeach community. I'm just thinking, just in terms of Land Beach community, there's an argument that the revised central route impacts Land Beach community and is close to residential housing.
It's correct, and that's why we're bringing it as an option during this consultation, why we're consulting on it now, and why we have it as, why there's several options that still exist on the table to discuss. So I would agree that the central option it passes close to Land Beach and through Land Beach, in fact, if you count the two sides of the village.
Yeah.
So it provides, it has an impact, but it also has some opportunity as well, which is why we consider it as a valid option.
What's the opportunity? Sorry.
The opportunity that, if you go to the more detailed map, Amy.
Yeah, bear with me.
So in terms of opportunities, that revised central option provides the opportunity for 2 stops in Land Beach, one to the kind of into the mid of Land Beach, one to the south.
Has there been data on where the majority of Land Beach residents are going? Where are they using the bus for?
So we've done, so as part of the SOC, so the previous stage of this project, we did what we call market analysis.
Okay.
And that analysed the markets within this corridor and also further afield to understand where trips were being made from and to. So the detail of that is in the strategic outline case, and that looked at Land Beach, Milton, Waterbeach, Histon and Impington, Cottenham and other locations kind of directly outside of the study area as well. And just while we're on that original central option that got revised, it was part of the reason was to do with the public feedback, but also the modelling work that we did at that previous phase. Those options that kind of came across the A10 south of Waterbeach, adding that additional junction on the A10 at that point caused significant issues in terms of the impact on the highway network, and it also led to traffic rerouting through Milton, through Land Beach, and further afield through Horningsea as well. So it wasn't just the public feedback, it was that combined with technical work that led us to revise that option.
Thank you, Amy. Just on that point, I just had one final question, and it was just in terms of, I think public transport is great, but it's just to understand if traffic congestion on the A10 isn't reduced by this, especially sort of with the Waterbeach Newtown, is there any plans or is there a risk that the busway would turn into a road?
Paul, did you want to? I mean, I think the answer is no. That's not what we're planning.
Okay.
I mean,
that's definitely not what we're planning.
The consenting route that we're going down through the Transport and Works Act order is specifically for a public transport route. Mm-hmm. So that is what our consent to build this infrastructure would be based on.
And the consent means the legal permissions we get to produce it. We're actually getting it's called a Transport and Works Act, and that's a sort of legal framework for what we're then allowed to build. And we're, as Amy said, we're only looking at a Transport and Works Act to build a busway.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, so it would be a difficult. So we can't ever. We're individuals like you, so we're not in a position to say it will never happen, because who knows what will happen in the future. But what I would say is that it would require a very significant local political decision for it to ever happen, and it would probably go beyond that due to the planning, as David and Amy have just set out, the planning process that we're going through the Transport and Works Act. There would be significant work to do before that ever happened, and therefore I would guess significant local consultation required and all of that kind of stuff. So it's not something that we're planning. It's so I wouldn't anticipate it happening.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much.
But in kind of to answer the wider question, to expand the discussion. So with regards to your going back to the original, what are the impacts and the benefits of the various routes? So just to expand on what Amy's set out before, the 2 routes both meet the primary objective of providing a fairly fast direct route from the Newtown down, linking with the existing guided busway, as you can see on the map. Mm-hmm. So as far as that concerned, both both routes serve the purpose of what we need to deliver. So now we're kind of getting into more, what are the differences between the two routes, and kind of the western option is just, a fairly fast route, direct. It crosses quite a bit of agricultural field, passes to the west of all of the polytunnels, and obviously crosses Milton Road which turns into Butt Lane further on near Impington. So that stop that we've got there potentially provides a stop for people that live in that side of Impington. And I guess we'll hear back from people who live around that area as to whether they kind of support the route passing that close to the kind of their development, their village. The revised central route.
But it doesn't split Impington in half. Sorry to interrupt you there. That route goes around the side of Impington. It doesn't split the village in half, which the central route does.
That's correct. But
yeah.
but if you're going to argue that the central, the infrastructure splits the village in half, then every road that goes through the village effectively splits the village in half.
But this isn't a road, it's a bus route.
In essence, this is pretty similar to a road. So I see what you're saying, but I would say it doesn't really split in my view, it doesn't split the village in half. It obviously puts a road through,
which doesn't go through a village at all. The central route does go through Landbeach.
Correct, and that's the impact here. The impact that I would suggest is that it passes closer to the homes in Landbeach, and the question, I guess, that people in Landbeach have.
That's already there.
Say again?
Yeah, just saying it. I realise I've sort of spent quite a lot of time on this, so
that's fine.
I'll answer the survey. I just do feel that it destroys the fields that are there and is very close to Landbeach residents.
I think both of those are valid points that we need to take into consideration, and the question is, do the strengths outweigh the weaknesses of this route, and likewise for the other route too.
Yeah, thanks, Paul.
Okay,
thanks for your questions, Al. So next person is Sophie Garrett. So will I mute you this end? Hi, Sophie.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, good. So I had a kind of comment and a question. So I'll make the comment first, which is, I think from reading all of the material that comes out about cycling in Cambridge, and I support cycling, it's a really great thing. Just as a pedestrian who routinely walks along one of the guided busways to get to work, I think it comes across as if sometimes it's presumed that everyone's going to kind of dolly along with kind of, in bikes with baskets, and it's all going to be really convivial for all users where cyclists are. And sometimes it's not like that. It can be quite dangerous for pedestrians, because the rate that if you've got a decent stretch, the instinct is, and I've done it myself, is to get your head down and to just go at a really quick pace. And sometimes it's not particularly pleasant sharing a pathway with a cyclist, with a lot of cyclists at commuting time. And I just wanted to make a sort of request, really, that you look at different ways of really making sure that it can be used by people with dogs, people with young children, so that in losing some of the countryside along the corridor, it's not replacing it with like with a super highway where it's a hostile environment to walk. And my second question is quite different. I suppose what occurs to me is that you are really dependent on people changing their behaviours and using the busway and not driving in. And I think the risk is with big infrastructure projects is that as soon as you free up roads by creating something like a busway, then it will create traffic again. It might not have the intended effect. Like people who ordinarily might get the train in might go, oh brilliant, the roads are clearer, I can drive in now. Are you banking on the congestion charge being implemented in order for you to feel confident that that this will be a success.
Okay, thanks very much.
They're all really good comments and really good questions, actually. So regarding your first comment, sorry, just getting disturbed. Regarding your first comment, so I fully agree. On the existing busway, even if you're a cyclist, like I've taken my kids out on the busway before and felt intimidated, and I can be one of the fast cyclists, but when I've had my kids out with me, and you get the commuters coming past at breakneck speed, then yeah, I fully agree. It is sometimes quite scary, and therefore it is one of the considerations that we will have when we kind of develop this route. And if you look closely at kind of the detailed mapping and some of the cross sections and stuff, you'll see that in some areas we actually propose a wider path rather than just a single 3 meters, and we're proposing kind of segregated path, so to enable separation between cyclists and pedestrians.
Oh, that's helpful. That's helpful. Thank you. Yeah, it's good to know.
And then going back to kind of some of the comments from Nigel earlier about Mere Way, and obviously we are aware that we are proposing a project that runs alongside Mere Way. So kind of, as I said earlier, we anticipate eventually that kind of the route that we're going to provide will be fairly straight, and it will enable fairly high cycling speed, I guess. But the fact that Mere Way still exists and provides quite a decent walking route may be a way that we kind of develop our strategy.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's just it's a shame to lose some of the ability to walk around Waterbeach just because it, I think it sort of copped it.
But anyway, where possible, we will put segregated infrastructure segregated between cyclists and pedestrians.
Yeah, thank you.
Going back to the road space and kind of the busway. So in terms of the busway, the reason that we're developing it now in advance of Waterbeach New Town and all of the development coming is so that when people move into the new town, this infrastructure and services that run on it will be available from the start rather than something that comes later. So the thinking behind that is that if you move to a place where you've got a great bus service, you may actually move to that development because it has the bus service or the active travel links and all of that, and therefore you may move to the development and not bother to buy a car or not have 2 cars, for example. So that's part of the reason why we're looking to get the infrastructure in earlier rather than later. And in terms of the A10, we envisage that the A10, even with this infrastructure in place, we envisage that the A10, there's still going to be traffic on the A10, and it's probably going to be something similar to how it is today, congestion charge or no congestion charge, given that the A10 is a strategic link between Ely and Cambridge, linking onto the A14 here. Amy can probably correct me if I'm wrong here, and talk a bit about the modelling. But the busway itself is looking to provide the link between the new town and Cambridge, and therefore is kind of specifically for the residents of the new town and the villages that it passes. So, Waterbeach Village, perhaps. The park and ride sites are primarily aimed at trying to take off traffic from this section of the A10 before it hits Cambridge. So the park and rides are more geared kind of what you were discussing about, trying to remove traffic from the A10.
Yeah.
However, even with all of that in place, given the size of this new town, there's still going to be people driving because, that's how it is. What we're doing is providing opportunity to kind of help spread the load.
Yeah, okay, that's helpful. Thank you. That's really, really helpful.
There is another project ongoing, I should say, that looking at potentially, dualling is still on the table, but it's looking at the A10 itself and what mitigations are required between junction 33, which is at Milton, and Ely. So that's an ongoing, but it's a much longer term project. we keep in touch with the project team, but kind of it's a larger project. It's a little bit further into the future, and it has slightly different aims. But just so that you're aware that it is ongoing. There is another project ongoing looking at the A10.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. For your questions, I'm just going to pick through the chat now, Paul. I know Nigel's got his hand up, but he's already to go, so I just want to pick out a couple of questions from the chat, which I think are things. There was one question here about why isn't there a park and ride option beside the new railway station with A10 access through the new town, so we could have one transport super hub? Why are all the park and rides at such distance from the railway station? Amy, did you want to answer that, and I can answer what facilities are going to be at the railway station?
Yeah, of course. So the railway station is obviously separate project to this project. However, we've been talking to the railway station team and the developers of the new town whilst we've been developing the options for this project. And obviously the railway station itself is a fair distance from the A10. Taking traffic off the A10 to the railway station would mean potentially a lot of vehicles travelling through the residential areas of Waterbeach Newtown, which is obviously not attractive to future Newtown residents, and not what the purpose of those internal road network of the Newtown is for. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there will be a car park at the railway station for the purposes of the rail journeys, but we want to avoid as much as possible taking vehicles off the A10 to a park and ride site that's a fair distance away, rather than close to the A10 where they can hop off in any of those locations there. So the intention is to have kind of multiple transport hubs around this area, both within the new town at the railway station and at the park and ride and at the stops along this route, to kind of suit everybody. Everyone has different needs, and each of them will suit people differently. So there's a reason why the kind of railway station is not the kind of main hub, and that there needs to be multiple hubs along the corridor.
Yeah, and just to add to that is that the railway station is planned to have parking and cycle parking and a number of other facilities as part of that relocation. Just a quick one here from Emma Fuller. She says, is it possible to give feedback to an email address rather than answer the survey? And the answer is yes. If you don't wish to answer the survey, or you feel your points don't sit into the survey, even though within the survey I've put a number of free text box, please email us at contact@greatercambridgeshire.org.uk, and we will take that into consideration as part of the feedback. There are a number of questions here. I think we've covered most of them. We've covered off about the A10 dueling status. David Lackey just say, why is everything on a separate project? Is this not joined up? I think it is joined up, where we do talk to teams developing the different things, but the structure is to have a different project team looking on different projects, but we do talk to all the other people who are developing the things. But we also do recognise that there's a lot of development in this corridor, but then the Waterbeach Newtown development is a very large development, so it needs a lot of infrastructure.
So it goes slightly further than that, David. So there's an overall programme that sets out kind of the various projects that are ongoing.
Yeah.
And we do slightly more than talk. We actually work together and collaborate with all of the other projects quite extensively.
Yeah, that's good. Nigel, you've got your hand up for another question, so I know you've had another go, but I can't see anyone else with a question. So if you unmute Nigel and...
Yeah. Hi. I've got 3 questions from a Land Beach resident, and then I'm going to come back to Amy on one of her statements that she just made. So from a friend who lives in Land Beach, and I think this is really quite a fair comment. She received a leaflet through her letterbox called Waterbeach Busway, and every word on the leaflet said Waterbeach this, Waterbeach that, Waterbeach this, but it made no reference really, absolutely. So I've got it right here in front of me now. It's got absolutely no reference to Land Beach. So her concern was that as a Lamb Beach resident, she picked this up, read it, and quite frankly binned it until I contacted her and said, "Oh, what do you think about your village being cut in half?" And she goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "That leaflet." And she goes, "It's just Waterbeach." I said, "No, it's actually Lamb Beach." So I think, in terms of consultation, I think if you picked up your leaflet and reread your leaflet, I think you'd be staggered to sort of say that you've consulted with Lamb Beach, because the Lamb Beach residents wouldn't even know that this was going to affect them, and it's cut their village in half. So she was quite upset by your poor leaflet. Then the second one was because obviously you're going to be in competition with a railway, which is about £3 something return from Waterbeach and 7 minutes into Cambridge. Is this busway going to be aimed at the £2 fixed fare, or are you going to be looking to charge more than £2 per fare? And the other question she had was, what hours will it be running? So will there be continuous noise from the busway? And also, is it going to be something that people can use at night and residents will have to put up the noise? And the question I was going to come back to Amy on was that absolutely the new railway station, we've always been told in Waterbeach it will have a major road running straight to that railway station. So when you say that the new town won't want the traffic going to the railway station, absolutely, we've been told in all the other consultations it will have all the traffic coming from the A10 to the railway station. So, if there'd been a lot of Waterbeach residents, you'd have upset them quite badly, Amy. So one of the things, if you were talking to the developers, you'd actually understand that the big plan is to take the traffic from the A10 to the railway station, but it's not coming through Waterbeach Old Town or Old Village.
Can you clarify what you mean by a major road, Nigel?
Well, a road to the rail. Amy said that the new town wouldn't really want the cars going to the train station, but that's the model we've been told. That there's going to be a road from the A10 to the railway station. So,
I think what Amy said was pragmatic. So you wouldn't want.
You know what? Your park and ride's in the right place. You wouldn't put that at the railway station. I agree with you. So I agree with you on that. Your park and rides are in the right place if you do a park and ride system. But it's just that there is going to be a road to the train station.
Yeah, so there'll be two. In fact, there's the northern access into the new town, which has already been built, and you can probably see it from opposite the research park, which will provide a route around kind of the northern side of the new town and round to the rail station, and then there will be the southern access, which will be, I guess, a new roundabout just to the north of Denny End, where Denny End Road meets the A10, which will take you across to the railway station.
Correct. Yeah.
But you wouldn't, as you said, you wouldn't want a park and ride worth of cars accessing the railway station. But you would expect vehicular access to access, on a smaller scale, to access the parking that's provided there.
Yeah, so come back to this leaflet. Right. I do feel sorry for the people of Lamb Beach, because you read this and, if I was in Lamb Beach, it'd go in the bin.
Well, the project's always been called Waterbeach to Cambridge, the busway. We deliver that leaflet to all properties in Lamb Beach, Histon, Impington, Milton. We've had a wide level of interaction already from people who receive the leaflet in Lamb Beach and other villages and things. But I hear what you say. You're entitled to your opinion about it.
No, it's not my opinion. It's people of a resident of Lamb Beach contacted me to say that it doesn't mention Lamb Beach whatsoever, even though you're going to cut their village in half.
No, well,
I think it's an interesting point, actually, though, Nigel. It's because obviously, we put a lot of thought into designing the leaflets and the booklet. In fact, loads of work went into that. So the feedback is interesting, and we're always looking at ways in which we can kind of try to reach our audiences, you know, as well as we can, because we want to speak to people in Landbeach. That's why we had an event there, and that's why we're having, you know, all these online events, because we want people to know what's happening and to have the chance to feedback, especially given the fact that in this case that, you know, there's a choice that one choice obviously is the west and the other through the centre of Landbeach, and therefore the people of Landbeach are probably, you know, I wouldn't say the most impacted, but, you know, a pretty we'll want to have a say on those two options. So it's interesting that people haven't picked up on the fact that this is, you know, passing Landbeach, and
they have now, or some of them have. But
well,
what she was saying is that
when they all turned up to the event, but it's interesting.
Correct.
It's an interesting point, and we'll take it on board and kind of use it to improve our future marketing.
Yeah, because I think it mentions Waterbeach about 12 or 14 times, and mentions Landbeach 0.
With regard to your other comments, so just remind me what they were.
The £2 single fare.
So this, for those who don't know, Nigel's referring to the recent Making Connections consultation, where it was set out that the GCP will be looking at reviewing bus fares across the Greater Cambridge area and wider into Cambridgeshire. And so the answer would be yes. The fares from this on this route, in fact, and from the Park and Ride would be covered by any decision that is made under the Making Connections project. Okay,
so it should be £2 single.
But we don't know what the decision is yet, and there's a way to go. And this project, you know, we obviously have colleagues who are working on Making Connections, but personally, I'm not, not very involved in that project, and kind of leaving it to my colleagues to kind of deliver that while I'm delivering this major project. But all I can say is that there's a long way to go before Making Connect, you know, we have any approval or in fact whether a full understanding of what Making Connections will deliver.
Because I think it's quite interesting, because obviously at 90 million, that's 45 million journeys that have to be made to break even, to pay back the 90 million if it's £2 a trip. So you look at, you know, how long does it take to do 45 million paid journeys, and then the hours of operation.
So in terms of the cost benefit analysis, I mean, that will be done through the business case process. It's not just your bus fares. It's obviously we're providing active travelling infrastructure, which all counts towards, you know, that cost and the benefit realisation. So,
but we have the mere way for the active transport, don't we? Because Rebecca's paying for that in advance of you. So we've already got the active.
We've already
way.
So
your active way.
In terms of your last question about time, then obviously we are looking at. The GCP is also looking at that under its programme in terms of earlier starts and later finishes to all the bus services in Cambridgeshire and in the Greater Cambridge area, and that would include this.
So this will be starting at 6 o'clock in the morning then?
Don't know. I can't say what time it will start, but early, yeah.
Much early. I mean, because being serious, one of the issues that you have with public transport, my daughter's a nurse, and you can't actually get to Addenbrooke's to start a shift at a reasonable time using public transport. You'd have to leave at about 5:30 in the morning, and you don't get home till about 9:30 at night, because, you know, the inadequateness of reaching Addenbrooke's. And obviously one of the great things is obviously Cambridge South train station, which just pushes people back to the train, and you have to question really this white elephant. You know, you're up against a 7-minute train, which will be going to Addenbrooke's soon, and you know, it is hard to justify the £90 million really.
I mean, Nigel,
In my,
I think that it's this. I think the thing is it's the scale of the development. Waterbeach Newtown is a significantly large development, and we see the busway as complementary to the improvements to the railway. And I think, given the number of people that are planned to move to the new town, you kind of need everything. You need the improvements to the railway line, you need this busway, you need cycle facilities, and you need whatever improvements on the A10 come forward. I think you're going to have to deploy everything to manage traffic, and we definitely see that the busway adds journeys that the railway doesn't. So, for example, one thing could be it could come down and turn right when it joins the current kind of busway and go round to the west of Cambridge, which the railway doesn't. So
one of the great things about the busway, and we all know it, is because my daughter's disabled as well, is that it's free. So the bus really does help, you know, the aged community, which is brilliant. You know, so the aged community get a free bus, and disabled people get a free bus. So that's brilliant because it takes them into the heart of Cambridge too. So so I can understand that this is brilliant for the older population.
Okay.
So
thanks for your comments, Nigel.
It's great to have free buses, isn't it?
High quality public transport is always.
But they are free at the moment, so it's good for for a section of the community.
Fine. I'm just gonna. We've got a couple more questions just in the chat. I want to move on to now, guys. One question here from David was: did you ever consider trams, Amy?
Yes, so right at the beginning of this project, we looked at what solution would work on this corridor and into central Cambridge. So we did a piece of work that looked at a variety of public transport solutions and did look at the railway as the sole solution. And like David said, we need all of these solutions to kind of work on the corridor. In terms of trams, that was one of our considerations right at the start. We ran into some challenges in terms of actually what that network would look like in the centre of town, and they're kind of similar, I guess, to the Cambridge Autonomous Metro and the challenges that they faced into the centre of Cambridge as well. So the infrastructure required for a tram network is much more significant than what we're seeing here, and obviously we've got precedents in terms of the existing guided busway in terms of that infrastructure and connecting with that infrastructure that meant that the busway was the best solution for the corridor.
Okay, thanks. Another question here: has on-street parking near the bus stops been considered? This could be a problem in Waterbeach, for example.
Yeah, so at the moment we're yet to design individual bus stops. On the animation on the website, we've got an indicative layout of what one could look like. That includes some parking, some disabled parking, a drop-off space to try and minimise the impact of having a bus stop on the surrounding roads. As we take this project forward and we move on our designs a step further, particularly looking at bus stop locations, we'll consider each location individually and exactly what needs each location has to understand the infrastructure required. So that will be a consideration that we'll pick up as at the next stage of the design.
Okay.
Just to clarify something there, so the parking that we show in the clip is just disabled parking for disabled bays, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so there's we wouldn't be looking at providing normal parking at the bus stops. It's just a couple of disabled bays and probably a drop-off point. But I think we would need to consider the impacts on the surrounding area and what mitigations are required, because we wouldn't want to be really encouraging a whole load of people to park near these bus stops in a village location if that particular route and that particular bus stop was chosen.
We've got to think, obviously, we've got the park and ride options as well, which will provide parking. So there'll be parking on the route, whether it be at site A, B and C as well, which would hopefully attract more people to those dedicated parking areas rather than informal parking.
Okay. Well, actually, the person who asked that question about parking has left the chat and would like an answer by email. So we will get that as an action.
Or we can send the transcript.
Or we'll send the transcript. Yeah, we can send the transcript, and that would be the best way. I think we've covered all the questions in the chat. There's one here which is like, if if the Waterbeach New Town plans have been approved, why does the transport links come after that? If the Waterbeach gets New Town but oppose the access, why does it just get pushed across to Land Beach? I think these are. There is a much closer link between the construction of Waterbeach New Town and the transport links. If you think about it in terms of what happened with Cambourne was started in 1990, and we're still currently haven't put in we're still talking about the busway to link it that. So these two things are much more linked, and also we've seen in terms of the requirement to move the railway station and the requirements on the developers to upgrade Mill Way, that the infrastructure is much more closely linked. The planning authority is much more closely linked to the planning. And again, I think in terms of Amy has explained quite a lot throughout the process we've gone through to identify the routes we've come. So it's not about pushing it to Land Beach or across Land Beach. There's been a very detailed technical process and engagement process to identify what we think is the optimum route. So I think that's how I would answer those two questions. That I think in terms of that. So there's still time. I think in the meeting, if someone else would like to ask a question.
There's a couple of other questions in the chat actually, David.
Oh right, yeah. Well, no, to cover the transfer, I said if these two options are opposed, will it move again? I think that's what Emma's question was. Paul. Did you hear what I said? No.
These two options are opposed. Would it move again?
Yeah. I think where we are is that we've gone through quite an extensive process, this 4-step process that Amy set out, where we've identified what we consider to be the two best options, and the process of this consultation is to get feedback from the community and from stakeholders about what the strengths and weaknesses are of the two options. Going forward, going forward, Paul, it's up to you to make a recommendation.
Yeah, so I was thinking of another question, sorry. So in answer to the question, so the previous consultation set out that there was general acceptance amongst all of those who responded to the consultation that we should look, that the busway option was, a valid option to look at, and general support for us moving to the next stage. So obviously we made the recommendation to the executive board based on kind of the results from the consultation and all of the technical work we did. The consultation also set out the preference for the Western option as we had it, but also in kind of discussing with everybody, during that consultations process, we also had various discussions about the other options, and we understood what the issue was with them, and that's why we brought back the revised central option. In fact, we brought it back and presented it to the executive board back in June 2021, alongside the Western option as the other option that we would look at in this stage of the project that we're currently in. So we've kind of set out the reasoning as to why we brought these two options back, and at that executive board that there's the option for people to write in and to question our recommendations, and kind of our recommendations were met with fairly little opposition. As David said, we think these are the kind of the two options, that the two best options that are left remaining on the table. So my job now is to kind of see out this consultation, hear what people say, and eventually get to the point where I can recommend one of the options as our preferred option to the board in June of this year. Given the discussions I've had with people so far, most people still seem to kind of support the need for this busway. The discussions I've had so far give a fairly even balance between people who are kind of supporting one or two of the options, or some people who kind of, you know, are less worried about which option comes forward. So I don't really know what the outcome of the consultation is going to be until kind of we've passed the 8 weeks. But so far the conversations have been fairly balanced, and people still seem to see the need for the busway. But should we reach a point where, you know, everyone opposes to it, then I would have to declare that to the executive board when I make my recommendation, and then it will be a political decision as to kind of how we proceed.
Okay, thanks, Paul. There's just a question here, and I can't remember the answer, which is how many people engaged in the earlier consultation?
Engaged in or responded to?
It says engaged. So we did a number of online events, and we also, which because it was due to lockdown, we weren't allowed to do any face-to-face. So and we did a number of that, and we had a good survey. We'd have to check back to there was a report done, wasn't there, of all the consultation?
I think it was over 1,000 responses.
Yeah, there was a report done.
Yeah.
That analysed all the responses.
Yeah, so there's a report, and that is on our website, David. But from memory, it was well over 1,000 replies we got back, which was, you know, we felt it was a very good level of engagement with the community.
I think, given the kind of the slight controversy that was causing Waterbeach by the kind of the options that went through Waterbeach, we also actually generated a lot of kind of personal engagement with people in the Waterbeach area and around, in fact, which is why we kind of did quite a few events, online events at various parish councils and stuff.
Okay, Nigel's got his hand. Nigel, last question then, and
yeah, it was just coming back to Paul, because I think you've confused me now, Paul, because at the start of this process we said the central route wasn't in the initial communications with the public, and I guess you guys made that route up without any consultation, and you've given it to the board, and you've now brought it to the people to discuss. So nobody's yet discussed the central, have they? That was just something made up by the GCP for the GCP board, correct?
no,
So it wasn't part of the initial it wasn't on the original routes, was it?
Yes, it was.
It was.
So
it?
no, the central
Okay.
the central option was, as shown in the map that Amy put forward, but the revised central option, so that additional spur up between the Landbeach Road and up to the new town was what the part that we revised.
Yes, correct. So
and we also
fine. Okay,
so
it wasn't consulted on, so that's fine.
Also, there was some revision at the southern end as well, Paul, around the
landfill,
around the tip. So there was a number of things.
So yeah, we haven't consulted on that map before that shows the position of the revised central option. However, people discussed it during the consultation with me and said, "Why haven't you put an option through there?"
That's fine.
So there was that kind of discussion, which is one of the reasons we kind of considered it, as well as all of the technical reasons that Amy went through earlier. So it's kind, you know, we're on a process of elimination here. So we are looking at all of the options and consulting at various points where we have the need to consult, and where it is a good time to consult. And at this point, you know, we've obviously got the two options that we've kind of narrowed it down to, and are running this process of consultation to hear what people think about them.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Thanks, Nigel. So there are a number of other opportunities for you to be engaged in this process. First of all, we're really keen for you to fill out the survey and let us know what you think. If you don't want to fill out the survey, then just drop us an email and feedback. We've got 3 more in-person events, which are on Tuesday the 21st of February at Histon at the St Andrews Centre in the evening, on Monday the 27th of February at Waterbeach at the Baptist Church, and Tuesday the 7th of March in Milton in the community centre there, where we will have Amy, myself, Paul, and the team will be there. We've got some banners and we've got the detailed maps and stuff. So it's a good opportunity if you want to pore over a map and have a detailed look at a particular point. We're also doing a further online event on Thursday, the 23rd of February, which will be exactly the same format as this. If you are not able or want to come back or have thought of something else. So those are the event things, and the let me just look at things. Yes, and the whole consultation runs until midday on Friday, the 24th of March. So I think on that point, Paul, is there any closing remarks you'd like to make?
No, I think we've had a good conversation. So just thanks to everyone who's turned up tonight, and yeah, you're welcome to obviously come to the in-person events as well if you wish. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for your engagement tonight. Appreciate lots of really good questions and stuff. Something that not Paul, myself, and Amy will not do, which is we do put these on YouTube if you want to go back and listen to our answers again. But I personally don't watch it because it's just watching yourself on YouTube is one of the most terrible things you can do in life, in my opinion. But there we go. But so thanks very much for your time tonight, and it's available if you want to have a look at anything again. And on that point, we'll close the meeting. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thanks, David.